Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today, and this programme is all about young people and how as Christians we can support them, encourage them to make a stand for Christ in politics where it matters today. So in this programme today I'm joined by Rebekah Moffett, Communications Officer for Christian Concern, together with Danielle Dieppe, who is from Conservatives for Christ, together was a graduate of the Wilberforce Academy. So welcome to the programme. I'll start off with you, Rebekah. It's always good to have you on the programme. And can you just share with Christian Concern the work you do, for example, with Daniel, who's also the son of Tim Dieppe, who's a regular guest on this programme. So our viewers know who he is. And actually equipping and preparing the next generation and the challenges that unfolds to prepare them to live and work in a post-Christian society.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you very much for having me back on. It's a real
pleasure.
To be back. Yes, as part of Christian Concern, we run and put on the Wilberforce Academy. Normally I'm joined by my colleague Ben, who helps to run the Wilberforce Academy and organises it and all of that. We've got that happening this September. But it's wonderful to have Daniel here because he is a graduate of last year's Wilberforce Academy, I believe. Daniel could probably tell you more about how that went last year. But essentially, we put that on to teach the young people of today, young professionals, students, and give them sort of more of a Christian view of, okay, this is what culture is like in the UK right now. A lot of the time in churches, perhaps, you're not finding this sort of teaching. But we really get down to the nitty-gritty of what it means to be a Christian in today's culture, how we can make a difference, what we can do in practice. So, for example, Daniel's obviously got involved in Conservatives for Christ, is actually one of the co-founders. He'll probably tell you a bit of how that got set up. But I would like to think that potentially Wilberforce Academy is enabling more young people to set up things like this, not just politics. You know, we've got people setting up Christian schools as well, people going into pro-life movements. They're really making a voice for Christians in society today, and that's what Wilberforce Academy is all about.
Amazing. And Daniel, warm welcome to the programme. Your dad does a very good job when he's on this programme, Tim, and he does a really good job. So I'm pleased that you're following in his footsteps. You're currently a university student. You helped set up Conservatives for Christ, for Christians in the Conservative Party. Sadly, I think there's not that many of you, is there?
Well, there is a number of us, and we're a new organisation, and we are growing. And I think there is a reason for us. You know, we need to
absolutely.
You know, in general, across the wider population, there aren't very many people involved in the major political parties. So we're saying to Christians, get involved, show your voice. And that's what we're going to do through Conservatives for Christ. Excellent.
And how's that gone down with the within the party apparatus? As we know, sadly, that all our mainstream political parties have long departed from our Judeo-Christian heritage. They're following very much of a kind of liberal left agenda. So how does bringing back some resemblance of biblical values to the party? So, I mean, I'm very pleased you're doing it because I think this is the future. But share with us how you are coping with that environment within the party.
Thank you very much, Simon. Look, we haven't had that much interaction with the Conservative Party yet. It did only found 2 or 3 months ago. We are hoping to run a fringe event at the Conservative Party conference in October, and we've had some positive thoughts from the few remaining Christian Conservative MPs within the party itself. They've initially kind of blocked us from running the fringe event. Now, whether that's because they don't like some of our views, or whether it's because we're a new organisation, so we don't have the rights to just immediately host a fringe event. We're not sure, but we've been in contact with certain MPs who are going to fight for us to try and get a fringe event.
Excellent. That is the future, because I mean, if we follow, for example, the Republican Party in the States, and the way that Christian evangelicals in America made the issue of abortion their number one criteria in order to gain the Republican vote, means the Republican Party had to adopt a position where they were against abortion. And that proved to be a great success with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. What is your hope that you can have an influence on the party as more Christians stick to their guns, stick to biblical values, can actually have an impact on the party and the direction of the party?
Well, I'll give you some examples. I mean, in the short term, Danny Kruger, the MP, just by Bath in the southwest. You mentioned Roe v. Wade. Shortly after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, he said in the Commons, I think this was correct. Actually, he said something that isn't very radical. He said something like, I don't believe the woman should have full sovereignty over her body up to term, which is, that's pretty much what abortion laws are in all European countries. But he got an extraordinary amount of hate, not just in the Commons in that moment, but of course on social media afterwards. Conservatives for Christ, through our social media initially at least, want to show something different. We want to say, well, no, it's perfectly within his right to say that, and actually we support him. So we want to be, a base to Christian Conservative MPs that are saying the right things on these issues.
Absolutely. And can you also share the challenge that your generation faces? Standing up on a kind of biblical platform, standing up for Christ on university campuses as well, and being Christian. It's not easy in your generation, probably far harder than in mine, than also in Rebekah's as well.
Yeah, it is. You get hate on campus, you get people saying you're wrong. I think I've been led by the Lord to some brilliant group of friends, Christian and non-Christian. So I've been very favourable in that light. But of course, you get people who don't like your opinions and say they're medieval, whatever. I've thought about them. I'm okay with my opinions. But it is difficult for a lot of Christians out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Rebekah, you're slightly older than Daniel, yeah. So you're kind of helping and equip his generation now. How important is it as Christians, whether from the top of the generations going down, that we pass the mantle on to the next generation to run with it, and particularly when it comes to society and standing up for the big moral issues of the day, particularly now as we have a leadership contest underway for who will be our next Prime Minister?
I think it's so important, and actually I think the leadership contest itself just shows how important that is. We've got two people standing head to head. We've got Rishi Sunak on one side, Liz Truss on the other. Rishi Sunak says, at least, he's a practicing Hindu. Liz Truss has said before she at least supports Christian principles, possibly as a Christian. We're not sure, possibly questionable. But I think that leadership contest in itself just shows the need for Christians of all generations to be involved in politics. Actually, neither of them have made an amazing stand on the moral issues that count. For example, Liz Truss isn't particularly known for being pro-marriage. She's quite pro-abortion and has certainly voted on some of those issues before. Rishi Sunak, by contrast, hasn't particularly voiced any concerns over any of the moral issues, really. So it would be great to see in this contest both of them making their views known. But I think this provides a space for Christians to either make their views known and say, well, actually, no, we want you to stand for these issues. We want you to make our own views known. We want you to stand and support these. I know Conservatives for Christ have got a letter going out as well. Daniel can probably talk about that afterwards as well. But it's also really important that Christians themselves get involved in politics. There's almost this vacuum where Christians don't seem to be getting involved, and that's not necessarily just the Conservative Party. You've got the Christian People's Alliance. There are other parties as well, depending on which way you're inclined. But I think it very much shows the need for more Christians in Parliament, in politics, making these moral issues come to the centre, actually, and having a Christian voice there where it matters.
So, Dan, you get a chance to vote to see who'll be the next leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister.
Indeed, yes.
So, any thoughts on how you'll be voting? And as Christians, what should we look for in the characteristics and the moral character makeup of our leader, who will be our next Prime Minister as well?
It's a great question, and it's difficult for me. I'm one of only like 150,000 people that get to vote. I err on the side of Liz Truss. I'm somewhat undecided. I think that Rishi Sunak looks more prime ministerial in how he talks and speaks to people, but Liz Truss is a bit better on ideology, on conviction, what she's interested about. She's spoken about free speech. She's the only one of the two of them to talk about Christian persecution, and quite openly, and even quoted Corinthians in a speech on freedom of religion as well. So I do err on the side of Liz Truss for those reasons. Whether she'd actually be the better leader, I'm not sure, but I do err on the side of her. But you mentioned Conservative Christ. We're putting out resources in the coming weeks on the key differences between the two of them. Where do they stand on religion? Where do they stand on freedom of speech, on family, and all the other key issues that Christians should be concerned about?
Absolutely, which is very important coming into a general election as well. And Rebekah, when we're kind of reflecting on this, I mean, personally, I kind of very disappointed with the level of characters that we've got on offer, and I don't think it's a fair system, the Conservative system, whereby the parliamentary members of the Conservative Party whittle the candidates down to 2 candidates, and then it's left to the ordinary Conservative Party members to vote. I think there should be a kind of broader election with a larger number of candidates to vote to actually reflect more of what's happening in the country than what's happening in Parliament. But for younger viewers can just get so switched off by looking at these debates between the leaders, who will be the next Prime Minister. Can you just share with us, for example, how important it is that young people do engage in politics and why it matters? I mean, I know that a lot of young people are extremely passionate about politics on particular causes, but, when it comes to Westminster, what's happening in Westminster is just like, nah, turn off the TV.
Yeah, well, it matters because it shapes the future. Really, and this is the future that we'll be living in as young people. I have somehow included myself in that, but
yeah, you definitely can. You definitely can. I'm not giving my age away, but you can there.
Thanks. No, it's fine. But it's the future. It matters. If we want as an older generation, if we want our children to grow up in a future that appreciates Christ and puts Christ at the centre, well, now is the time to do something about that. As young people, if we want to live in a society where Christ is put at the centre, now is the time to do something about that. So of course it matters. Look at these key moral issues that Daniel has been talking about. There's sort of the pro-life movement, there's pro-marriage, there's education, Christians and education, identity issues, all of these things that matter, that are being debated in Parliament. But where is the Christian voice? So we need to be switched on as young people and say, well, actually, no, these things do matter to us. Social media is a great place to be talking about that. Conservatives for Christ have their own Instagram. We've got our Wilberforce Instagram as well. That's sort of a good place to start. But I think start from the bottom and work your way up, but make your voice heard. Now is the time to do that.
Absolutely. And Dan, how does it feel to be a rebel? Because
it's twice as exciting.
Because to actually stand on biblical issues today means that you're going against the kind of conventional wisdom of the day. You're going against the kind of preset kind of liberal agenda. It's good to be a rebel, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, all the best political heroes, all the best even biblical heroes, really, were all rebels. They didn't just. It's so much more boring just to toe the party line, do what everyone else is doing, stay within the world. Go against the world, go for Christ. It's so much more fulfilling, it's so much more exciting, and you'll make a much bigger difference. So it's great.
I think that's really important as well. I think that's almost what we teach at Wilberforce Academy as well, in a sense that it's good to be countercultural, and actually to be Christian is to be countercultural. Yep. You look at William Wilberforce, whose name we get for the Academy. He was extremely countercultural. To be campaigning against the slave trade was a massive countercultural point. But actually he had success because he was following the will of God, and I think that is what we need to be doing as Christians.
Well, one saying that's quite frequently used in this regard is dare to be a Daniel, which is possibly partly why I'm named Daniel. But yeah, it's go against the culture that you're currently in. Yeah.
Well, which is good. So on that note, Daniel, how important is it as young people also to get grounded in the Word, to understand the Bible, to have a full biblical understanding, so that then, as it says in Ephesians 6, you are then armed with the full armour of God to take on these battles? And there are exciting battles to take on because, I think it's imperative that to remind our culture and to remind our leaders that we are part of a Judeo-Christian heritage. This was a Christian country. We did send missionaries around the world. God did raise up this tiny island to become a world empire, a world superpower of its day. And this nation has played a huge role in world history. Is your dad has a recent book looking at God's intervention in major conflicts during the First and the Second World War as well.
Well, in answer to that question, perhaps I could just say yes. I mean, but it is fundamentally important to be rooted in the Scripture and in God's Word and in His truth. I think truth is something that a lot of young people in particular, but our society in general, has forgotten. If you don't have that, then you don't have any grounding, and you're free to be washed away by whatever is coming across in our culture. And so many people are. It's incredibly sad. But there are groups of young people that do stand for truth, and Wilberforce Academy is one great example of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been invited to one of the Wilberforce Academy
You'll have to come.
events, but that was back in 2011, so it's quite a while ago.
Still stands.
But no, I just think it's so important, isn't it, that, I mean, of all the Christian organisations that deal with the big Christian issues of the day, I would very much believe that Christian concern is at the forefront. And sadly, with a lot of ministries as well, there is one thing, let's just keep it preaching to the converted. Let's just keep our own little kind of audience of supporters. Let's not challenge the media. Let's not challenge our political leaders. But you actually engage within the kind of mainstream media. You work on big news stories when a Christian is dismissed from a job. You raise these issues such as abortion and actually then provide a conscience for the nation, which is so important. Of course, the media also likes this because you get a lot of news stories out there, and that's obviously your main role at Christian Concern. So going forward, how important is it that, say, if, for example, a university student just happens to watch this program and say, look, there's people here on this program, they haven't got grey hair, I might watch it, and actually think how they can get involved and play a role? Because when I was growing up in my 20s, the trouble I had was not having any kind of mentors and people that you could look up to or engage with to kind of show you the kind of ropes and the leadership that's kind of needed. So I'm very pleased that the Wilberforce Academy is there to equip young believers to stand in our society. Obviously, it's gone a lot worse than when I was young in terms of morality, in terms of moving away from our Judeo-Christian heritage and living really in a post-Christian society. So how important is it that anyone watching who's passionate about politics and passionate about Christ and wanting to represent Him can get involved?
Massively important, in a word. It's interesting you mentioned that other organisations are not necessarily doing what Christian Concern is doing. I think generally there's a lot of fear involved in speaking truth, as Daniel mentioned, and speaking up for these issues that really matter. But if you're a young person watching and you're thinking, well, what can I do? I want to make my voice heard. I'd say study up, study the issues. Study the issues at the forefront of society. Come along to Wilberforce Academy. Obviously, I'm going to say that. Obviously. But I think it's really important not to be fearful, actually. Mention them to your church leaders. Mention them to your youth pastors. Churches need to be talking about these issues too. And at Christian Concern, we've got a whole load of resources. We've got some resources that will be coming out soon as well to help churches deal with these issues. But if you're thinking, I'd love to get into politics, I'd love to make my voice known, do it. What's stopping you? As I say, study up on the issue, root yourself in the Word of God, and go for it. There's nothing to stop you.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this excellent videos produced by Christian Concern, and this is an invitation to attend this year's Wilberforce Academy 2022.
Welcome to Wilberforce Academy 2022!
Expectations coming in.
I didn't know what expectations to have. Coming to Wilberforce Academy, I came very open-minded.
Honestly, I'm feeling very excited. My eyes have been opened even more.
We're here at the Wilberforce Academy 2021 here in Oxford with over 80 students, young professionals passionate about being equipped and empowered to stand for Jesus Christ in public life.
This week has absolutely been, I guess the word that I can describe is immense.
It's really been good. Like, I think it's been more than good. It was more than I expected.
It's been amazing so far. It's been blowing my mind every day because I've never heard any of this stuff before.
I have already had so many of the scripts that I already had in my head totally rewritten.
I did not know how much Christians influence society today.
I am hungry to learn more.
Coming to something like this at the Wilberforce Academy gives you time to stop, to think, to process some of the key issues that are going on in culture, the contemporary issues.
We're not afraid to talk about the issues that many today are not willing to speak about, whether it's on marriage, whether it's on gender, whether it's on abortion or euthanasia. Whatever it is, we need to be speaking into these issues.
Even just the application group that we just had, I opened up with a question, just a practical question of what can we do to apply everything that we've learnt today. Just seeing how different people were just so ready to respond to that question, complimenting each other, adding to what each other was saying was just so amazing.
We try our best to ensure that the next generation of Christian leaders in public lives can be fully equipped. I would like to give them 4 Fs. Help them find their place in God, fit into their place in God, function in their place in God, and be fruitful in their place in God.
My mind's been so expanded from all of the knowledge, the things I didn't know, like myths that have been like debunked.
Yes, yes.
This is the place to be.
Definitely this is the place to be because it sort of just expands your scope.
I've found my voice this week. I feel really bold, really confident in the scripture.
I've really been challenged, worldview and how we approach talking about Christ and other issues.
I came into Wilberforce knowing that I needed to develop in my theology, but it's been more than that. It's been about making relationships. It's about being encouraged by like-minded people.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been so like other Christians, and I've had the most amazing conversations. It's been so good.
Yeah,
so good.
and building all the friendships as well.
Yeah.
It's been really good.
Yeah, being able to be with like-minded people, thinking about the same things, with these amazing topics has been so encouraging.
Why should you come to Wilberforce?
The Wilberforce Academy is for every Christian that wants to share Jesus wherever they are.
If you actually feel like I want to transform my life and I want to transform the lives of my local community and the UK generally, then definitely apply because it will be good.
This has been the most fantastic week. I want to say one of the best weeks of my life, honestly.
Whatever you're doing, I don't think anyone's doing it like Wilberforce.
If this isn't being talked
I'm joining in because he is the guy. Rory is on fire.
I have gained a mentor. Come on.
Yes, that's it, man. That's one of my mentees. I'm serious.
Come
a
on.
lot of things we do here. He's going to be one of my mentees. I'm going to be working with him because I see in this man a gladiator of righteousness, a warrior of holiness, a Trojan of truth, an arrowhead of peace. Go on,
Come on. So that type of relationship, that's what I'm talking about.
Come next year to join the movement, to join a community of young people who love Jesus. Come and worship God. Come and make new friends. Come and be equipped and empowered to stand firm in the culture.
So I'm told that that is now open, applications are open for 2023 for next year. This year's ones are closed. So
register your interest at least.
Exactly, there you go, I'll put that in.
That'd be great.
And Daniel, as a graduate of the Wilberforce Academy, what would you say it's given you? And the reason why I think it's so important that we discuss this, and particularly to our viewers as well, is to understand the challenge that your generation is greater than any other generation that has actually faced in recent years in terms of standing up for your faith, because we know that our culture and our society is against our beliefs, but also then the importance of equipping the next generation to actually stand because you are the future, and it's important that we invest in the future, and you are the future.
Well, look, I mean, it's something that I recommend to all young Christian adults, and if you're not a young Christian adult, go and talk to someone you know and recommend it to them, talk to it to your church leader, whatever it is. I mean, the example I always give is, think about, say, the best sermon you've heard at church this past year. That is what you get at Wilberforce Academy several times a day, over several days in one of the top cities of learning in the world, and you're there with other people equally interested and engaged in these issues, so you get brilliant connections, great teaching. It's amazing. It's amazing, and that's why.
Can I just ask, Daniel? Obviously, you were there in September. What was the talk that most impacted you?
That's a good question. Thanks for that.
That's a great question. Possibly, it's a tight one because so many of them were good. I really liked the talks on Islam, actually, because that's something that hasn't been talked about that much in recent years, but they gave you such a grounding on it, looking at both the Quran and the Bible, perspectives on it, and real life examples of Islam in the UK today.
Excellent, excellent. And also I think a key component in this is friendship, isn't it? Building friendships, building kind of a base of support for like-minded people so they don't feel isolated, not feeling alone, but are actually can draw strength from each other and encouragement for each other.
Absolutely, yeah. The Wilberforce Academy is all about building a community of like-minded Christians, actually, who get it, who understand the issues, who are there together. And I think Daniel's probably a testimony to that there are several people, or well, there are lots of people just from this year alone, but there are loads of people going back. We've done the Wilberforce Academy now for 10, 11 years, and there are so many graduates who've gone on to do something at the forefront of culture, who are making their voices heard. You know, you're not alone. That is so important. It's absolutely about building up a community of like-minded Christians.
And Daniel, what does your generation need from the older generation in terms of help, support, encouragement, prayer, and also belief as well?
I think they need to be taught. I know a lot of people that were regular attendees of church, and then I met them at university, say, and I'm like, well, do you know basic sexual ethics about, say, marriage? And they have no idea. They were never taught it by their church. So there's a bit of an emergency there, I think, with a lot of churches failing to ground their students in this. So pray about that, but also actively talk to your pastors, church leaders, saying, are you teaching the young people these basic things, the reasons for God? Apologetics might be another good word for it. I think that's a
really good word. Anyway, Daniel and Rebekah, thank you so much for being my guests on this week's Politics Today. I really appreciate you coming on the programme and giving the voice to your generations, which is so important. I want to thank you for watching this programme at home. These generations, both in Rebekah and Daniel, are the future. They are the future Christian leaders. So therefore, we need to support them. We need to pray for them. We need to encourage them. And also we need to biblically equip them so that they can stand in their generation and stand in this post-Christian society. So I want to thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.